Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Big Life Podcast. Neal Oates Jr., Robin Lewis. We've got a fun one today. Robin, are you ready?
Hello, Neil. Yes, sir. I tell you, I think I say this all the time, but I say it because it's true. It's always good to get together with you, brother, and to share and hopefully add value. Well, I say hopefully, we've been able to thankfully receive a lot of great comments from our listeners who have been finding value in what we are sharing. And that's all, it makes it all the more fun and meaningful to me. So, right, I'm ready to dig into today's show, sir.
So, today we're going to have some fun because we're talking about something that is important, but is also engaging. And that is this idea of networking. What is networking? How do we do it right? What are some maybe pitfalls, some challenges all about networking? I think that it is a hot topic. You and I have mentioned this, and we are actually going to talk about how networking brought Robin and Neal together. And so we're going to get to trace some of that as well.
Yes, sir. Right on. I look forward to it. And networking has played such a big place in my life. But time out, Neil. We got to do something today, though,
Okay.
folks, that I know that Neil wouldn't do on his own. But Neil actually has written a book, and actually, it's going to be coming out here in the very near future. And one of the subjects in the book, we were talked about discussing networking before this even came up. So I'm going to kind of put Neil on the spot today. I said, Neil, we cannot talk about networking without talking a little bit about your book, because folks, a chapter in the book is actually on networking. And so you're going to actually hear a little bit of those thoughts today. And I just want to encourage you right now. We'll talk more about his book, probably perhaps in a different show. But just be aware that, there's a chapter in Neil's book on networking. And it's a book that you want to make sure and get in your hands.
So,
And so,
Robin,
Neil,
I'm going to jump out and I'm going to just go ahead and show people the book, The Affluent Negroes, Seven Principles for Minority Wealth Creation. And it's not about race, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about ethnicity. It is about seven principles using Negroes as the acronym, and N is for networking strategically. So when Robin and I were having conversations, of course, that where his mind goes, because he was a pivotal part and is a pivotal part in the work itself. So thank you for mentioning that. It is going to be available coming out February 17th of 2025. And we'll share some information and also in the show notes where you can get early access to some bonus material, but then also where you can pre-order the book if you're watching this episode, listening to this show prior to February 17th.
that's right on, sir. I'm so proud of you, by the way, and it's going to be so good. It's adding value to people's lives. And, sir, just if you would, I don't know, if you don't mind, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you tell us what the E and the G and the ROE, just you wouldn't have to get into it. We're talking about the N today, networking, but is it okay to share like what the actual
Absolutely. So the whole idea of Negroes, well, first, I want people to know that it is plural intentionally, and that is so that people know that the affluent Negro is of no power, of no significance, because it is not singular, but that we all can experience success together. And so that's why we intentionally went with the plural. But then N is for network strategically. E is educate yourself. G is generate wealth through entrepreneurship. The R is reinforce resilience. O is own it all. E is going to be excel everywhere. And then S is serve others.
I like it. And so, yes, those topics are very hot topics that we all can learn from and get better at. And so that is a book for everyone. I appreciate knowing you, sir. I feel like I'm with the royalty here, I'm
Oh,
with the affluent here. I mean, that book is going to sell like wildfire, man. And so I don't want to take away from our topic today, though, but we couldn't do this without mentioning that. So thank you for doing
pleasure. So, Robin, I do want to just dive in really quickly from the very first page of this chapter. It talks about the verb network. And so that's where I want to share. And then maybe we can just start our trek into this conversation about networking and network. But network, a verb, the deliberate cultivation of professional and personal relationships to create opportunities and exchange valuable information for mutual growth and success. And I think there are a couple pieces there that I want our audience to hear, that it is a deliberate cultivation, right? But then there is a mutual growth and success. So I would like to just first say what networking is not. Networking, ladies and gentlemen, is not walking in a room with your business cards like Gambit from X-Men and just throwing them out. Networking, hey, so look, hey, how you doing? How you doing? That is not what we are talking about. So now that we know what we're not talking about, Robin, give me some of your either ideas, thoughts about networking, because we are going to get to the importance of it, and not only with a ideology mindset or framework, but networking, the importance of it in our Robin and Neal's life and how we came to be.
Yes, sir. I 100%. So networking is about relationships. So if you ask me what it's about, I had a quote by Ivan Eisner. He's the founder of BNI. I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with BNI. It's a networking organization. You might even be a part of BNI, a BNI chapter somewhere around. I love what he said, Neal, and I wrote it down. He said, it's not what you know. So we're talking about success. It's not what you know. It's not who you know. It's how well you know each other that really counts. So I think networking is, for me, it's what you said, you're cultivating here. So it's about developing relationships. I have another impactful person in my life, John C. Maxwell, author, speaker. And he says, I wrote his quote down also, and this is something that John Maxwell said himself personally. The most important decision in my business life, was to develop great long-term relationships with people who could help me make a difference. So I think I see networking as developing relationships, long-term, meaningful relationships.
Now, Robin, on that, you talk about this idea about developing and long term. Neither of those phrases, developing or long term, are sexy in our microwave society. I want instant. I want something now. I don't want to cultivate. I want to immediately receive a return on those things I haven't even invested in. And
Yes.
so, even as you talk about knowing, is how well you know each other. That is a key part of building relationships and networking, having a strong network. Now, I know that our audience, the very first place when they hear networking, they're going to a professional environment. They're thinking, how can my network, my professional network, get me to where I want to go? But I don't think that I could do a good job, that we could do a great job, without first talking about the power and importance of our personal networks. Because I know my personal networks, when I've done them right and when I've utilized them properly, I have had professional bonuses and benefits of that as well. What are your thoughts on that, Rob?
I agree 100%. And it goes counterculture. So that usually when we think of networking, we think of it as an event. So we're going to a networking event, right? So that means if I go to a networking event, that means I'm going to get a relationship that's now going to help me build my business. I'm going to find people that I can serve. And that's going to happen at the networking event. Where I agree with you, I think in my experience, it's more about building that relationship. It's more about what you and I talked about when we talked about the big life, we talked about the G. It's more about adding value to others. It's how can we, yes, we're going to meet people, but then how can we serve people and develop and strengthen that relationship that we have? And as we strengthen and develop that relationship, it's kind of like what Zig Ziglar said. If you help enough other people get what you want, you'll get what you want in life. In fact, in a lot of cases, they'll help you get what you want in life. So I see it as a long-term thing. So that's one thing I would say to our listeners. Networking is not this idea of just going, yet you are going to meet people. Mm-hmm. But what we're suggesting, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we go forward today, that it's more about building, making a connection, building a relationship, seeing how you can serve, taking a genuine interest in people, seeing how you can serve and help them. And yeah, as we talk about some of the things that have happened, like Neal said, how we met, for example, I think people will get to realize that there can be great benefit by developing those relationships, and it doesn't end where Neal and I are today. It
Yeah.
only continues to get the opportunities are there for bigger and better.
So let's go ahead and go down this road. You mentioned this idea or the importance of being interested and not interesting, right? Being
Yeah.
interested in people,
Yes.
caring about them, getting to know them well enough so that they will want to know about us to have a deeper connection and tie. And so I think a fantastic place for us to segue to would be the networks and the networking that led to the Big Life podcast, right? For you and I to be here today, for our audience to be listening to us, it wasn't where I saw you in some, I'm going to date myself, in the phone book and said, I'm going to reach out to Robin Lewis. I think that I like the way that he speaks. I like the way that his name is spelled. So I'm going to see if I can build a
I
relationship with
like his
him.
logo.
Right. So none of that was there. So we are here today because our network overlapped. And specifically, one person in general, I think our audience probably knows. Hopefully, they know if they've listened to some episodes or shows in the past, but Dan Longman. And it was because he was interested in us individually that we ended up getting together. And so before I tell people how I met Dan and how I came to be connected with him, I would love just to hear what you have to say about Dan and his networking event that we met at, but then also the power or the impact that people and places and the connection to Dan has had in your life.
Yes, sir. And I want to share that real quick. And I actually thought about it before our call today. And I'm going to share that. But just before I do, you talk about interesting versus being interested. I just want to just drop a little tidbit here for our listeners. A lot of time we put emphasis on having this elevator pitch, on having this pitch ready for when we go to a networking event and somebody asks us what you do. And I want to suggest to our listeners that yes, you should have something, but that is not as important as you taking a genuine interest in what theirs is what they are about. If you take a genuine interest in what they are about, it's going to have a whole lot more impact than you sharing what you are about. Don't misunderstand me. I want you to have your elevator pitch, but the point that I'm making here is that it doesn't have to be all that. It can be a simple little thing about what you do. Sometimes it's the simplest things, actually, when you talk about what you do and you're not trying to put the emphasis on it, that actually a lot of times for me has worked out to be, help me to move forward with some tremendous relationships. The less I talk about me, the better it is. That's what I'm suggesting. So,
But before you go any further, this reminds me early when I started my career, I was invited into a room of real estate professionals and business owners, a room that I didn't think I needed to be in, that I deserved to be in. And so they're passing around the mic and letting people know this is who I am, this is what I do. And I had my elevator pitch ready, and I was, a young dude, and I'm in this room with some big hitters, right? And so my time came, and everyone else is, hi, my name is Mike. I do this. My name is Eddie. Here's what I do. My name is Troy. And so it comes to me, and I'm thinking I'm going to really shine. I'm the youngest one in here, least experienced, so I must be pretty good. Now, I want to remind you, the reason I'm in the room is because a relationship invited me in. Right. And so I get the mic and I tell them, hi, my name is Neal Oates Jr. I work with affluent clientele to professionally sell and market their homes to the world. And, I'm thinking that I did this thing. And the host, he's like, what does that mean? And I said, I am a real estate agent. He's like, so why didn't you just say that? I'm like, I did, right? And so and I learned that day, like, dude, no one cares about what I do that much. If I'm genuinely interested in them, they will be genuinely interested in me. And so, needless to say, the reason I remember my elevator pitch is because that was a big lesson I learned that day, and I have not made that mistake since. So I put that thing in my back pocket, way in my back pocket, so I make sure what not to do next time I have that opportunity.
Such a good point. And sir, I saw you do an interview recently. And for those of you who are not following Neal, by the way, Neal, how does somebody find you on YouTube, for example?
So the easiest way is just to go to nealoates.tv,
Neal Oates.
Nealoates dot
Sorry, say
TV.
that again. I got in the way of it.
So nealoates.tv. That's going to bring you straight to my YouTube channel.
Tons of videos on there that are helpful. I saw one the other day. I don't remember the gentleman's name now. I think Tesh or something like that, but he was a global international realtor, right? And so that was his focus. I don't think there's anything wrong, folks. I'm not suggesting that you don't niche. I'm not suggesting that you could choose the segment of customers that you want to serve, right? It's good to do that. And Neal does that. Neal does serve the affluent. But what I'm saying is that what's more important is us taking an interest in what others do. And so, Neal, let's talk a little bit about, my approach, folks, is a little different. When I talk about networking, some of the people I'm going to mention to you today, you might not consider that, well, that wasn't a networking event that you went to. And a part of what I would say to you about networking is that networking is being a part of anything that you're a part of. You can network at church, you network at the library, you network at the school. If you're a parent and you bring your kids to soccer, that's a networking opportunity. So the point of networking is really doing that just about anywhere and everywhere that you go, and especially places that you are a part of on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be quote unquote designated as a networking event. And so I haven't shared this with Neal yet, actually, but I am actually 9 people down deep in relationships to where I met Neal. So where I met Ken Zorovich, and then through Ken Zorovich, I actually met Dan Longman, and Ken is Dan's partner in business. And so I met Paul Nelson. Paul, this is going way back now. Paul was a friend of mine. And Paul introduced me to go work at a job, Neal. I was going to work as a salesman. I was doing door-to-door sales. And as I was doing door-to-door sales, selling gourmet foods, I met a lady at an insurance company called Cookie. I think I've shared this with you already. Cookie became a mentor of mine. And Cookie helped me to get into the insurance business. And I'm doing this quickly, folks. I could stop and talk about each of these relationships because each of them were meaningful relationships in my life. But I just want to show the connection. See, networking is not only about the person that you meet, but it's about who they know and who they know and who they know and who they know and who they know. And what I'm going to share with you today is 9 deep of that before I actually met Neal Oates, and here we are making an impact in our communities. And so Cookie gave me a lead for an health insurance lead, and to a gentleman by the name of Jim Pollard. And it's funny, Neal, I was thinking about this today, and I just saw a post yesterday that Jim is actually in the hospital. So I'm praying for Jim right now. We don't live in the same area anymore, so we're not as in touch as much, but he means so much to me that I'm praying for Jim. Right. And so Jim, introduced me to Amway. Right. At Amway, I made a decision to make a deeper relationship with God, which has transformed my life. And I also made a decision to invest in my personal development. Well, one of the things that they suggested is find a church where they teach from the Bible and you can go plug in. And so through the same insurance channel, I met somebody at a doctor's office. His wife was ill. His name is Philip. And his wife was his wife was pregnant. And he was thinking about getting insurance for the family. He invited me over to his house to talk about life insurance. This is in 1986. This is a long time ago. Neal, how old were you in 1986?
Hey, see, look, I didn't want to do it, Robin. I was 4 years old in 1986.
Thank you. You've said it before. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. So, folks, think about this. We're talking about networking. We're talking about somebody who is 4 years old, who he and I now are collaborating on doing a weekly podcast. And we're doing other things. But that just gives you an idea. Okay, so I reach out to, so Philip invited me to his home, talked about life insurance. In comes his, and while we're there standing, and she couldn't stop talking about her church. And so when they said, find a church, who do I get back in touch with? But Philip and his aunt Yvonne. And so through Yvonne, I met her husband, Victor, and I started serving with Victor at church as an usher. And Victor at church introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Patrick Eloa. You might even know Patrick. I know Ken Zarvich knows Patrick. They're in a networking group together. So keeping it short, Patrick was recognized as the Chamber Man of the Year, the Davie Cooper City Chamber. Patrick became the president or chairman, I'm not sure how you call it, with that particular chamber. He and I connected after that invitation and connection. He and I connected around doing an event together for the chamber. And so we did a Live to Lead, a leadership development event. And through that event, Ken Zorvich, who was a part of the chamber at that time, and I met, and we started connecting around adding value to the community and partnering with the chamber and making that happen. And then Ken became the president or chairman, whatever they call that. And he invited me to come and speak at the chamber, 5-minute talk. And so this is how we're making the connection. And then eventually they invited me to come and present for an event that they put on. And that's where I met Dan. And so Ken led me to Dan. And then, of course, Neal, I don't know if Neal has said this yet, but I got invited to a networking event that, this is years into the relationship now, that Dan and Ken had put on. And as soon as I saw Dan that night, he said, wait, you got to meet somebody. You guys got to meet. And that's how Neal and I met. So that's when I counted Neal. That's 9
Robin.
people down.
Tell people why Dan insisted that you and I meet. Do you remember what the topic was? Or the
I don't remember the
person was
exact one, but I know it was around John Maxwell and leadership development and personal growth. We were growth junkies. We were people that were in that field where we were hungry to grow and learn, and we were readers, and we had those are the things he had in common. But I don't remember the exact.
No, so that's exactly what it was. Because he said, wait, hold on, don't move. And it was almost like a love connection. He says, Dan, he says, Neal, this is Robin. Robin, this is Neal. You all are both big growth and development people, and you both love Dr. John C. Maxwell. And from that moment, I think we both had our significant others there, and they probably rolled their eyes and were like, oh, great, now we've got to hear this. And so since that day, it has been nothing but growing and building. So now that you've told the audience how you got connected up to that point with Dan, I'll just do mine really quickly. And this is the power of network and networking. So for me, I met Dan through his wife, Missy through their daughter through my son, and so the reason, and I just want y'all to have that part there, because my son and their daughter were in a church elementary group together doing an event, and Missy saw our kids being nice to each other, helping them along the way. And so she said, hey, let me introduce you to my husband, because as men, we needed to have other good guys, other good husbands and fathers around. But at that point, I was volunteering in the kids ministry. How did I get to the kids ministry? It's because a couple of individuals had recognized me because I was always at the church. I loved kids. I love pouring into the next generation. I take myself serious, but not that serious, right? And so I'm volunteering in the kids ministry at this time because Manny Rosario was like, hey, you seem like a good guy. I've seen you here consistently, faithfully serving at church, and I saw you at a men's conference. I'm like, well, yeah, you saw me at the men's conference because Kevin Thompson is the person who I was a church attender, but I wasn't really plugged in, Robin, right? So as a guy, I would go, we had chosen this church because, potential church, because they had childcare, they had environment for my son, Neal, to be engaged while I'm sitting in service. And so one day Kevin sees me. He was like, "Hey, brother, we got a men's event, VIP men's conference. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Nah," making every excuse. And Kevin says, "Well, you said that you don't have this and this and this." And he just knocked down every rebuttal that I have. And my next excuse was going to be, "Well, they've already closed ticket sales." And he says, "You know what? I have a ticket with your name on it." And I'm like, "Okay." He takes out a ticket and writes Neal on the ticket and hands it to me. Kevin Thompson, fantastic salesperson, right? Fantastic guy. But because I showed up at the men's conference and Kevin took a liking to me, that got me connected with Chris Brown at our church, that had me involved and engaged with some small business ministry that we had. So I always wanted to be at the church and around the guys. I'm serving with other friends, other men. The kids pastor at the time, Manny Rosario, was like, "Hey, we see that you like to have fun. Let's bring you over here." And so from Kevin to Chris to Manny, then I'm in the children's environment with my son, with Dan and Missy's daughter. Get connected to Missy, get connected to Dan, get connected to Robin Lewis.
Wow. Yeah, that's the power of networking. And we have no idea. Yeah, I would challenge our listeners to stop sometimes think about the relationships that you have and how they came about. And you'll be amazed to know how when you trace that back, how there are thin lines that join us together. But those thin lines sometimes can make the most impact in our
But
lives.
Robin, I want to say this without Dan being interested in enough in us to know what we care about,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And for him to be able to make that connection, because the networking event, it was his event. So he and Ken, the purpose for this is, let me get some of my clients, some of my affiliates together, some people that I like, so they can be around me. And Dan and Ken did a fantastic job of, while they were hosting it, it wasn't about them, right? It was, how can I connect these people that I know, like, trust, that I care about around? And so I sit here and think, when I have my networking events or when I'm out, how much do I really know about the people who are around me, where I can find ways to get them connected to others that will be mutually beneficial to them, even if I don't see any type of monetary or financial reward from it, right?
Couldn't
And
agree
I
more.
am indebted to Dan for that, right? Because I mean, you and I, yes, we know this, but I also think of not only the business side, the business relationship that we have, but in one of the toughest times that I've experienced here in South Florida and in my life was during the flood, a couple of years back. And you were, yes, there for me professionally, but also personally and as a friend. The writing of this book, right, happens because I have someone in my network, because of Dan and all those other touch points, to hold me accountable, right? Knowing that if I keep or if I make a promise to you, I'll keep it. If I make a promise to myself, I'll break it. And so I think that, as you mentioned, just challenging people to go back and look at those key relationships and trace those back. And then maybe say thank you once we realize how important those were. And I do want to just ask you, just quickly, you were talking about, before we got on the air, about how God doesn't make any mistakes. You're tracing down this networking trail, someone that you thought about and some emails that you have sent out. Then all of a sudden you're telling an individual the impact, not that she had, but that her father had on your life, on our life, on the Big Life podcast, on my book, and who knows, generations to come. And I think it's important for us to communicate that to individuals when we say, listen, your loved one, or maybe even you, have played a significant role in this journey of my life. Would you go ahead and share some of that with whatever you can, Robin?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that in our lives, when we look at our lives, it's people who've actually impacted us. It's really, if you think about it, it's really people. If we've had any sort of significant thing happen in our life, we've achieved something, we've gone somewhere, we've done something, just fill in that blank of something that's been meaningful in your life. In most cases, it comes with and through people, with and through others. That's the reality. Life, I heard a quote. I wish, and I was trying to find it last week when I was thinking about this, not related to our call today, but life is relationships. Everything else is detail, right? So what Neal is talking about, just before we were getting on doing this show today, I was thinking about those people that I just described to you folks, that how Neal and I came together. And one of those people, Philip, who I mentioned, the gentleman who I mentioned, who I met at the doctor's office, and he invited me to his house to talk insurance. That gentleman is the one that was significant in me meeting his aunt and going to the church that I went to for 20 something years, that literally transformed my life. My engagement, my participation, my being a part of that church changed my life.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking about this to share with you guys today, not that part of the story, but just how we came to meet Neal, I got an email from his daughter. I had just sent out an email here recently, and had shared something that had happened to me, and she and I had done some work together recently. She was a part of a mastermind that I had done. So here it is now. Philip, may his soul rest in peace. He passed on a couple of years ago. And now here it is. We're having this. I'm thinking about this with Neal, and she reaches out to me in response to the email that I sent, and I got the opportunity to just let her know, as I'm thinking about it, that her dad had, first of all, a part to do with transforming my life. And not only that now, but it's also because of him actually led to myself and Neal starting a podcast a few months ago that is continuing to impact he and I, as well as we're making an impact to others out there. And so she was just so thankful to hear that, and was said that she enjoys hearing stories about her dad. She had no idea that this had happened, and she's planning to put up something online about her dad. Would I mind if she includes that story in there? And so, yeah, that's a good example of a thin line of a relationship that we have. And that's where we want our listeners to be thinking about those things more, right? And so if we take a genuine interest in people, and Neal, I know we're getting close to ending the show. And you think about that. We're just talking about networking, Neal, right? Folks, we could have another call just on this topic, because we haven't talked about really so I think I see networking, Neal, as leadership. And so it's about taking a genuine interest. It's about valuing people. It's about listening to people. It's about showing up with integrity. It's about building, what they said in BNI was building credibility. So it's about farming. It's about a long-term relationship where it's like, you can share. Neal, we didn't even talk about the golf course. We didn't even talk about pickleball, right? But it's people seeing you. I've heard you and I have had conversations apart from today about this, but it's people seeing how you carry yourself and how you operate on the golf course. That's what's important about networking, folks. It's self-leadership. How well are we leading ourselves? And how are we showing up for those people that we are actually interacting with? Are we being attractive? Are we being supportive? Are we adding value to them? And if we are being that, and to the extent we are, they will want to be supportive to us. They'll want to do business with us. They'll want to help us in doing whatever it is that we're trying to do. That's what networking is really all about. And we haven't even scratched the scratch of where those relationships can go.
Right.
We have no clue. Neal and I have no clue of really where that can go.
So here's what I do before we close out. Here's what I want to challenge everyone with, and encourage and challenge at the same time, because it's one thing for Robin and I to talk to you, but we want to make sure we communicate with you, that we connect with you. And in doing that, if we really are going to impact those who listen to us as well as each other, there has to be some challenge and encouragement there. So I'm going to ask you to just consider, how intentional are you with your network? How intentional are you with your networking? Meaning, how intentional are you about building and cultivating long-term relationships? If life, if life is relationships, if it boils down to relationships, are you living a big life? And I might be looking at you, you might be hearing me, but I'm really asking myself the same question as well, right? Is Neal living the big life? When I look at the relationships, and Robin is just one of them, I sit back and I say, man, I've got it good. Man, I am living a big life. I look at the quality, I look at the interconnectedness of the network of relationships that we have. And as you mentioned, Robin, we have no idea what doors are going to be open. We have no idea the impact that's going to come because of who we're connected to and how well we know each other. So I do want to, first of all, say thank you for being in my network. Thank you for continuing to leverage your network on my behalf and vice versa. And I'm hoping that, well, here's what I believe. I believe that our networks, our relationships continue to be mutually beneficial for you and I. But I also believe that it's going to be a fantastic thing for our audience and our listeners as well, as we start bringing on some of the people that have played a significant role in our lives. They're going to benefit. The audience is going to benefit because of our networks, right? Having friends and colleagues and mentors who have poured into us. So I can't wait to see what
Right
comes
on.
as a result of all of that.
Yes, sir. I agree 100%. And so, Neal, I'm going to ask you to please share, with our listeners, how they can find out more about the book. So, networking is just one chapter in that book, folks.
Mhm.
And you'll be hearing more about it. You can't be a part of the Big Life podcast and not hear about it. And so, we'll be talking more about the book. It's actually coming out very soon, February 17th. But in the meantime, can they go find out more about it somewhere, Neal?
So absolutely, the best place to go is theaffluentnegroes.com. Theaffluentnegroes.com. We're going to have lots of bonus material there. There's a lot of free training and educational material there
Free.
that even if you don't want the book, even if you can't get the book, we never want to have any hindrance to someone improving and being better, to figure out, to learn, to implement and apply those 7 principles that are going to lead to wealth creation. And networking is one of those key parts. So theaffluentnegroes.com is going to be the best, easiest place. You'll be able to get your pre-orders there. Everything you need to know will be at theaffluentnegroes.com.
Very good. And for clarity, sir, that is with the S on the end.
Yes, it is, because everything we
Plural.
do is plural, because
Okay.
we want to make sure that, and it's something as simple as the attention to detail, right? If you and I believe that life is about relationships and that one is too small a number for greatness, then if I create a work that says the affluent Negro, instead of people seeing a network, they might just see me. They might see a solitary figure themselves saying that I'm self-made, I've gotten here. And we know that even these self-made people didn't make themselves. They are just too ignorant or maybe too arrogant to admit that. So it is with the S at the end, theaffluentnegroes.com. Like I said, I'm excited to deliver this work. Robin, you know firsthand, probably as much as anyone, what went into this and the accountability piece. Without you in my network, without your relationship, our relationship, this right here is not a reality.
Well, I
And
want
so
to
I want
say
to give you a big kudos to that, sir.
thank you very much, sir. And I know we will be talking more about the book. Today wasn't about the book, folks, but since networking is a part of the book, I kind of twisted Neal's arm to talk a little bit about it today ahead of time. But while we're here, I do want to say that one of the best things that I like about the book is that Neal lives it. So he's not just coming from theory. He's not just coming from something that he read over here or learned over there or whatever you would want to say, got it from AI or anything like that, right? He actually lives these principles out. And so I want to encourage our listeners to go to that website and check it out. You'll be glad that you did. And Neal, if you'd allow me, I know you're going to close up, but I just want to thank our listeners. We've been getting in comments from you. You're enjoying the shows, and you're looking forward to the episodes as they come out each week. And I can't tell you what that means to us. Obviously, we're doing this because we want to add value to you, but we don't know that until we hear. And so it's so good hearing. So thank you very much for your feedback, and please give us feedback. For those of you who are thinking about it, it's very meaningful for us to hear. So please provide your feedback. Please subscribe to the show. You can do that on Apple, you can do that on Spotify and all the other platforms. And please share this with others. Our goal is to partner with you in adding value to people's lives, and it helps us to do that even better if more people are tuning in. So thank you very much. That's my little blurb for the day. And
So,
Neal?
Robin, I still don't know how we're getting such positive feedback, right? And it's wild because the more we talk, the more people want to hear us talk. I say our audience, with the exception of our significant others. Maybe they say, hey, y'all should go talk to each other. But as you mentioned, Robin, it is encouraging. Even the feedback that we receive, here's what I want to communicate to the audience to see how you all have received us, even when we make mistakes or when it isn't as smooth as Robin and I would like. There's encouragement there. So I want to encourage you all to maybe try that thing that has been in your head or on your heart for some time. Right? This podcast was a year in the making, and it just was never the right time. We never had everything lined up. And guess what? We don't have everything lined up now,
We, ne-
but we
we never did.
decided we decided that we're going to do what we're supposed to do, take a chance on each other with each other. And I know that our lives, and based on the feedback and the comments, I know that others' lives have been positively impacted. So get out there and try that thing that maybe has been on the back burner that you've been trying to get everything perfected for. And I know that you all will be glad that you did. You will have no regrets.
Right
All
on.
right.
Right on.
So, Robin, can I go ahead and kick everyone out of here? Are you ready, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It's been fun again.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Robin and I have some fun. We're talking about networking. We mentioned the Affluent Negroes book. We mapped out some of our relationships because that's what life is about. I believe that we have given honor and respect to Dan Longman, along with others on during this podcast that have had significant impacts in our lives. And then Robin and I just want to say thank you again. He's already asked and encouraged you to share, comment, like, subscribe, all of those requests. But then I want to do something, and I want to remind you that we love you, God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, we're right there with you. Take care. Bye.